I asked my son when the family barbecue was going to be. He answered, "Mom, that was yesterday. We forgot to tell you, there were only important people there." I stayed silent. A week later he called me. "Mom, I need $5,000 urgently." I replied, "I forgot to tell you." Those words left me paralyzed in front of my kitchen sink. I had the phone pressed to my ear, and I felt the air escaping from my chest, like when you get the wind knocked out of you unexpectedly. There were only important people there. Jason, my only son, repeated with that casual tone you use to talk about the weather or to say you forgot to buy milk. Important. I was not important. I looked toward the table where I had left the ceramic dish with my famous apple pie, the one Jason had loved since he was a kid. I had baked it that very morning, thinking about taking it to the family gathering. Next to the pie dish was the gift I bought for Tyler, my 7-year-old grandson, a remote-control truck I saw at the mall that cost me 3 weeks of savings. $50 that I set aside penny by penny from my Social Security check. "Mom, are you still there?" Jason's voice sounded impatient, as if I were the one making a mistake. "Yes, son, I am here." My voice came out calmer than I expected, but inside something was breaking. It was not the first time they had left me out, but this time there was something different in his tone. Something that made me understand it had not been an oversight. "Well, Mom, you know how Tiffany is with gatherings. She wanted it to be something intimate, just close family." He paused. "Anyway, I have to go. I have to take Tyler to his swimming lesson. We will talk later, okay?" He hung up before I could respond. I stood there, with the phone in my hand, watching how the wisteria vines in the garden moved with the afternoon wind. This Victorian house in the suburbs of Philadelphia had been the center of all gatherings for 40 years. Here we celebrated Jason's birthdays. Here we held the wake for my Robert when he left us 12 years ago. Here Tyler took his first steps. And now, suddenly, I was not close family. Tiffany, my daughter-in-law, the woman who entered our family 5 years ago like a fresh breeze, and who little by little became a hurricane that pushed me out of my own territory. But that afternoon, in front of that apple pie and that undelivered gift, I still did not understand how far her plan went. I walked toward the living room and sat in my usual chair, the one next to the window. From there I could see my grandmother's grandfather clock standing against the wall, the one that chimed the hours with a special melody that had accompanied my entire life. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. At that time, I should have been arriving at Jason's house, with my pie and a hug for Tyler. But I was here, alone, uninvited. If you ask me what I felt in that moment, I would tell you it was like falling into a deep well where your own voice echoes and nobody hears you. Because it was not just about a barbecue, it was about a clear message. Your place in this family no longer exists. What I did not know is that this was just the beginning. Because 1 week later, when the phone rang again and I saw Jason's name on the screen, my life was about to take a turn that I had not imagined even in my worst nightmares. But we will talk about that in a moment. First, I need you to understand who I was before all of this. Because to understand how I fell so low, you need to know from what height I started to crumble. If this story is touching your heart, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can continue hearing real testimonies like this one. My name is Margaret Sullivan. I am 68 years old, and for most of my life, I was the backbone of my family. I do not say it with arrogance. I say it as a fact. That is how my mother raised me. That is how I lived. And that is how I thought I would die, surrounded by my loved ones, respected, loved. This house where I now live alone, I inherited from my parents. It is an old construction in a historic neighborhood, with high ceilings, hardwood floors, and a garden that my father planted with his own hands. The purple wisteria that I like so much was a gift from my mother when I turned 16. "So that you always have color in your life, sweetheart," she told me. 52 years passed, and those vines keep blooming every spring, stronger than ever. Here I married Robert. Here Jason was born. Here I built my sewing studio in what used to be the sunroom. For 30 years I worked sewing prom dresses, christening gowns, alterations of all kinds. My hands were always busy, always creating something beautiful for someone. Robert was an electrician, a hard-working man, quiet, one of those who do not promise the moon but build you a solid roof. He died of a heart attack 12 years ago, when Jason was 30. It was so sudden that we could not even say goodbye. One Tuesday, he was fixing the wiring in an office building downtown, and by Wednesday at dawn, he was gone. I was left a widow at 56, with a paid-off house, some savings, and an adult son who was already working as an engineer at a construction firm. I thought the worst had passed. I thought I had weathered the biggest storm of my life. How wrong I was. During those years of widowhood, my house became the meeting point. Every Sunday I made pot roast, lasagna, or chili. My sister Susan came with her kids, Jason's cousins, and they filled the garden with laughter. Tyler, who was then just a baby, slept in my arms while I chatted with the neighbors on the porch. Tiffany had not appeared on the scene yet. The grandfather clock marked each of those gatherings with its special chime. That clock is over 100 years old. It is made of hand-carved mahogany, with gold Roman numerals and a pendulum that swings with a hypnotic rhythm. My grandmother brought it from Ireland when she got married, and she always said that as long as that clock kept telling time, the family would stay united. I believed in that promise as if it were a sacred pact. Jason met Tiffany at a work conference 6 years ago. She was a public relations manager for an events company. Pretty, self-assured, with that type of confidence that comes from being raised in a family with money. From the first time I brought her home, I noticed something in her gaze when she scanned the rooms. It was not admiration, it was appraisal. "What a big house for just you, Margaret," she told me the second time she came, calling me by my first name as if we were already close friends. "Does it not scare you to be here with so much empty space?" "It is my home," I replied with a smile. "All my memories are here." "Memories do not pay the property tax or the heating bill," she replied with a laugh that pretended to be funny, but left a bitter taste in my mouth. Jason defended her. "Tiffany is right, Mom. You should consider something smaller, easier to maintain." It was the first time my son suggested that I leave the house of my life. It would not be the last. They got married 5 years ago in an elegant ballroom at a downtown hotel, which cost a fortune. Tiffany wanted everything big. Designer dress, banquet for 200 people, live band. I contributed $5,000 from my savings to help with the expenses, money I earned sewing for 2 full years. "We are going to pay you back, Mom," Jason promised. I am still waiting. After the wedding, things started to change little by little, so slowly that at first I did not notice. The Sunday gatherings became bi-weekly, then monthly, until they practically disappeared. Tiffany always had an excuse. That Tyler had activities, that she had classes, that Jason was tired. "Why do you not come to our house instead, Margaret?" she would suggest. But when I went, I felt like just another visitor, not like the grandmother of the family. My sewing business was still running, although with fewer clients than before. The ladies in the neighborhood still looked for me, but my hands were no longer as fast as in my 40s. Even so, that space was my refuge, my place where I was still Margaret the seamstress, the one who solved problems with thread and needle. I kept my tools in a wooden box that Robert made for me when we celebrated 10 years of marriage. Inside, I have scissors of 3 sizes, needles of all thicknesses, spools of thread that look like an organized rainbow. Every time I open that box, I feel that Robert is still here, taking care of me. But loneliness has a weight that no toolbox can sustain. And then came the call about the barbecue. That we forgot to tell you. There were only important people there that split me in two. That night, after hanging up with Jason, I stayed looking at the pie dish with the apple pie that no one would taste. I threw it in the trash and cried while the garbage can swallowed the apples, the cinnamon, the crust I made from scratch. I felt like I was throwing away something more than food. I was throwing away the illusion that I still mattered. What I did not know was that in exactly 7 days, Jason would call me again. But this time, it would not be to exclude me from a gathering. It would be to ask me for $5,000 with the nerve of someone who thinks I am an ATM without feelings. And there, in front of that request, something inside me finally woke up. The exclusion did not come all at once like a door slamming shut. It arrived like humidity in the walls, slow, invisible, until one day you turn around and the whole structure is rotten. After the call about the barbecue, I started remembering other times. Small moments that at the time I justified with excuses, but that now, placed one after another, formed a pattern that turned my stomach. Tyler's 6th birthday, for example, I spent 3 days baking his favorite cake. Devil's Food chocolate cake with fresh strawberries. I decorated it with edible toy cars that I made with fondant because Tyler was obsessed with trucks. I arrived at his party with the cake in my hands, excited to see his face light up. But when I walked into their backyard, there was already another cake on the table. A huge one from an expensive bakery with a superhero design in 3 tiers. "Oh, Margaret, we did not know if you were going to be able to make it," Tiffany told me, with that smile I was starting to know very well. "That is why we ordered this other one. But what a nice detail you brought. We can save it for later." Tyler did not even turn to look at my cake. All the kids were around the superhero one, screaming excitedly. I stood there, holding my homemade cake like a fool, feeling that my 3 days of work were worth nothing. "Did you not know if I was coming to my own grandson's birthday?" I asked Jason later, when I found him alone in the kitchen. "It is just that you never confirm on time, Mom," he answered, without even looking me in the eyes. Tiffany needs exact numbers to plan things well. That was the first time I felt they were turning me into a problem to be solved, not the grandmother of the family. Then came Christmas last year. We had always celebrated Christmas Eve at my house. It was tradition. I made the roast beef, Susan brought the sides, and between all of us we set up dinner while the men set up the tree. At 11 at night, we opened gifts under my tree, that artificial pine I have had for 20 years that is already a bit scraggly, but holds more memories than any new tree. But that year, at the beginning of December, Jason called me. "Mom, this year we are going to do dinner at Tiffany's parents' house. Her mom is in delicate health and cannot travel much. And why do you not bring her to my house? There is space for everyone here. It is just that. Everything is already planned there, Mom. They already ordered the food. They have everything ready. Next year we will do it at your house, I promise." I spent Christmas Eve watching holiday movies on television, eating leftover chicken that I reheated in the microwave. My grandmother's clock struck 12 times, and each chime reminded me that I was completely alone. Susan invited me to her house, but I told her no. My pride was still intact back then. I still believed that if I acted strong, if I did not show weakness, things would return to normal. How naive I was. In January, it was Tiffany's birthday. Jason organized a lunch at an Italian restaurant downtown. They invited me, of course. But when I arrived, I realized they had seated me at the end of the table, far from the birthday girl, between people I did not know. Tiffany was in the center, surrounded by her friends, her mom, her sister. They laughed, toasted, took photos that I later saw on Facebook with hashtags like Best Family and Best People. I did not appear in any photo. When the bill came, Jason approached me. "Mom, can you support us with your share? It is $80. $80 for a meal where they did not even pay attention to me, where I was just another piece of furniture." I paid. Of course I paid, because that is what mothers do, right? We pay, we stay silent, we endure, hoping that someday they will return to us even a crumb of the love we gave. But the straw that broke the camel's back was in March, 3 months before the call about the barbecue. Tiffany organized a party at her house to celebrate her promotion at work. As I found out later through Susan, she invited 40 people, family, friends, co-workers. There was a taco truck, open bar, live music. I found out through Facebook. I saw the photos 2 days later. There was my sister Susan with her husband. There were Jason's cousins. There were Tiffany's in-laws, her aunts, her friends. Even the neighbor across the street was in the photos. Everyone except me. I called Jason crying. I could not contain myself. "Why did you not invite me?" There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end. "Mom, it is just that Tiffany says you always make uncomfortable comments about her food and her way of decorating. She says you make her feel bad. We prefer to avoid the drama." "What comments? When have I said something bad?" "Well, one time you said her rice was too salty. Another time that her curtains were too dark. They are small things, Mom, but they add up." I remained mute. Those were my great offenses? Casual comments that anyone makes in confidence? Besides, Jason continued with a tone that froze my blood. "Sometimes it is better for everyone to have their space. You have your life. We have ours. That night I hugged the wool shawl my mother knitted before dying. I put it over my shoulders and rocked in my chair, watching the dark garden, feeling like they were erasing me from my own family. The clock struck 11. Each chime rumbled in the silence of my empty house. And then, just when I thought I had hit rock bottom, the phone rang 7 days after the forgotten barbecue. It was Jason. "Mom, I need $5,000 urgently." Jason's voice sounded different now. Urgent. Needy. The same voice he used when he was a child and wanted something with desperation. "It is an investment opportunity I cannot let pass, Mom. A project from a coworker, a sure thing. But I need the money this week. You know I always pay you back." I stayed silent, feeling the rage rising up my throat like hot lava. He always pays me back? The $5,000 I contributed for his wedding he never returned. The $2,500 I lent him 2 years ago for the down payment on the car, not a dollar back. The $800 I gave him for Tiffany's dental treatment, evaporated. And now, after excluding me from the barbecue for not being an important person, he had the nerve to ask me for $5,000 more. "Mom, are you there? I need you to deposit it tomorrow morning so I can make the transfer." Something inside me broke, but not like a plate that falls and makes noise. It broke like when an electrical wire snaps inside, silent, invisible, but definitive. "Son," I said with a calm that surprised even myself, "I forgot to tell you that I do not have that money available. I only have money for important people." The silence on the other end was absolute. "What did you say?" "You heard me. I forgot to tell you, just like you forgot to tell me about the family gathering." "But Mom, this is serious. It is an investment. It is not the same." "For me it is the same, Jason. For years I have been important only when you need something. Money, babysitting Tyler, sewing a dress, lending my house, but for the celebrations, for the photos, for the family, there I am not an important person. Do not exaggerate. You have always been part of the family." "Oh, really? Then tell me, why did you not invite me to Tiffany's promotion party? Why did I spend Christmas Eve alone? Why did my cake for Tyler's birthday end up in the trash?" "Those are different things, Mom. Do not mix everything up." "No, son, they are not different things. It is all part of the same thing. You use me when it suits you and discard me when it does not." Jason exploded. "I cannot believe you are being so selfish. I am asking you for help and you come out with these soap opera dramas. I am your son, and I am your mother. But it seems that only matters when you need money." I hung up. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating so fast I could feel it in my temples. But for the first time in years, I was not crying from sadness. I was crying from rage, from indignation, from a strength I thought I had lost. The phone started ringing again. Jason. I let it ring until it got tired. Then I saw the WhatsApp messages coming in one after another. "Mom, do not be like this. Let us talk calmly. I swear this time I will pay you back. Please, it is urgent. Tiffany says you are being manipulative." That last message made me laugh so hard I had to sit down. Me? Manipulative? Me, who gave everything without asking for anything in return. Me, who stayed silent through every humiliation just to not cause problems. Me, who swallowed my pain so as not to ruin their parties, their celebrations, their perfect life. I turned off the phone. And there, sitting in my living room, I started to remember all the times I was important to them. When Tyler was a baby and Tiffany had her weekend courses, which turned out to be trips with friends to the Poconos. "Can you watch him for us, Margaret? It is just that we already paid for the hotel and there is no refund." I stayed with Tyler from Friday afternoon until Sunday night. Diapers, bottles, sleepless nights. I was 63 years old then, and my knees hurt from carrying the baby so much, when they needed me to sew Tiffany's niece's dress for her prom. "It is just that you sew so beautifully, Margaret, and the dressmakers charge a fortune. I spent 2 weeks working on that dress. Wine-colored taffeta, hand-embroidered bodice, perfect adjustments. I charged them only the cost of the fabric. They did not even thank me when the niece won an award for the best dress. When Jason had that tax problem and needed a co-signer for a loan of $3,000, "Just sign here, Mom." "It is just paperwork." I signed. Of course I signed. It turns out it was not just paperwork. Jason missed 2 payments and the bank started calling me. I had to pay $1,000 from my pension so they would not sue me. And the list went on and on. That night I counted in a notebook all the money I had lent them in the last 5 years. With a red pen, I wrote down every amount, every date, every promise of, "I will pay you back next month." The total sum took my breath away. $9,800, almost $10,000 that came out of my pension, my sewing, from selling some of my mother's jewelry. Money I could have used to fix the roof that leaks during the rainy season, to change the old plumbing in the bathroom, to treat myself to at least a small vacation. But no, I gave it all to them, hoping that would buy me a place at their table, in their life, in their heart. What a fool I was. I closed the notebook and put it in the drawer of my nightstand, next to the deed to the house and my will. And then, for the first time in a long time, I started to think clearly. If they only looked for me when they needed something, then the day I had nothing to give, I would disappear completely from their lives unless I changed the rules of the game. And there, in that night of silence and contained courage, my plan began. 3 days passed since I hung up on Jason. 3 days where I ignored his calls, his messages, his attempts to make me feel guilty. Then he appeared at my door on a Wednesday afternoon. He rang the doorbell insistently, and when I opened, his face was red with indignation. "Mom, we have to talk." "I have nothing to talk about, Jason. I already told you I do not have that money. It is not just the money." He entered without me inviting him, walked straight to the living room, and threw himself on the couch as if it were his house. "Tiffany is very upset with you." I remained standing in the doorway, arms crossed. "Tiffany is upset? And what did I do now? You told Aunt Susan that we treat you badly, that we exclude you from gatherings. Aunt Susan told my cousin Erica, and now the whole family is asking what is happening. You are making us look bad." The laugh that came out of my throat sounded bitter even to me. "I am making you look bad? Jason, you did not invite me to the barbecue. You did not invite me to Tiffany's party. I spent life alone. Does that not seem like you are making me look bad?" "Those are exaggerations of yours," I told you. "Sometimes it is better to have separate spaces. But when you need money or for me to watch Tyler, there are no separate spaces, right?" He stood up, furious. "You know what? Tiffany was right about you. She says you are manipulative, that you use the role of victim to control us. She says that since we got married you have tried to meddle in our relationship." Those words hit me like stones. Meddle? Jason, I have only wanted to be part of the family. I have only wanted to see my grandson grow. I have only wanted… Well, your way of loving is very toxic, Mom. The silence that followed was so heavy it could almost be touched. Toxic? My voice came out barely as a whisper. Watching your son when you guys went on trips is toxic? Lending you money that you never pay back is toxic? Sewing dresses for free for your wife's family is toxic? It is not about that. Then what is it about, son? Tell me. Explain to me how I went from being your mother to being a problem that needs to be solved. Jason ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. Look, Mom, I came to ask you to stop speaking ill of us with the family. And about the money? I seriously need it. It is to pay some credit cards that piled up. If I do not pay this week, they are going to charge us extremely high interest. There was the truth. It was not an investment. It was debt. And why do you have debts that big? It is none of your business. Of course it is my business, if you are asking for my money to pay them. God, Mom, why do you have to be so difficult? I just need you to help me this time, and that is it. This time, Jason, I have helped you 20 times, and not once have you fulfilled your promise to return the money. Because something always comes up. Tyler needs something. We have to pay for school. We have to fix the car. Things cost money. Then stop spending on things you cannot afford. Stop going to expensive restaurants, buying designer clothes, pretending to be what you are not. His eyes narrowed dangerously. You know what? Tiffany says you are resentful because we have a better life than the one you had. She says that is why you always criticize us. That was too much. Get out of my house. What? I said get out. Now. Mom. I said, "Get out, Jason, and the next time you come, it will be because you really want to see me, not my wallet." He stood looking at me with a mixture of surprise and rage that I had never seen in him. Finally, he grabbed his keys and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned around. "Do you know what Tiffany told me when she met you? That you seemed like one of those mothers-in-law who never let go of their sons." And I told her no, that you were not like that. But I think she was right. The door closed, and I was left alone in my living room, shaking from head to toe. I let myself fall into my chair by the window. The purple wisteria moved with the wind, indifferent to my pain. My grandmother's clock struck 5 times, and there, in that devastating silence, I understood something that broke my soul. I had lost my son. Not to death, not to distance. I had lost him to a woman who convinced him that his mother was the problem, and he chose to believe her. I cried like I had not cried since Robert's death. I cried, hugging my mother's shawl, that shawl that smelled of lavender and memories. I cried for all the years I gave without receiving, for all the times I stayed silent not to cause problems, for all the humiliations I swallowed with a smile. But between the tears, something else was being born. A decision, a determination. Because if I had already lost them, if there was nothing left to save, then I had nothing to lose. And a woman who has nothing to lose is the most dangerous woman in the world. That night I took out my notebook again. But now I did not just write down the money they owed me. I wrote down every humiliation, every exclusion, every lie. I wrote dates, names, witnesses, and I began to make calls. The first was to my sister Susan. "I need you to tell me everything Tiffany has said about me at the family gatherings. Everything." Susan did not need begging. In a 2-hour call, my sister uncovered a world I had preferred not to see. It turns out Tiffany had been poisoning my image in front of the whole family for years. At gatherings where I was not present, she dropped comments wrapped in concern. "Poor Margaret. At that age she gets strange ideas, right? Oh, wow. The mother-in-law always wants to have an opinion on how we raise Tyler, but these are different times. Small drops of poison that over time formed a river." Last week, Susan told me with contained rage. "At Erica's birthday party, Tiffany said that you asked Jason to give you a monthly allowance because your pension is not enough. She said you play the victim to get money out of them." I was struck dumb. Me asking them for money? "Susan, it is exactly the other way around. They are the ones who have taken almost $10,000 from me in 5 years. My sister sighed on the other end of the line. "I know, Maggie. I have always known what the situation is. But Tiffany is very good at twisting things. She has half the world eating out of her hand." That conversation opened my eyes. Not only had they excluded me, they had defamed me. My own family believed I was a burden, a manipulator, a meddling mother-in-law, and I had been so busy trying to regain their love that I never defended my name. 2 days after that revelation, I received a message from Jason. Not a call, a WhatsApp message. "Mom, I thought it over. I know we had a disagreement, but you are my mother, and you have always been there for me. I need to ask you a huge favor. Can you lend me the $5,000? It is urgent. This time I really will sign a promissory note and pay you in 6 months with interest and everything. Please." I read the message 3 times. I looked for the apology for calling me toxic. I looked for the acknowledgement of having excluded me. I looked for even an "I am sorry for what I said to you." There was none of that, only the request for money. I took my time to respond. In fact, I took 2 days. Finally, I wrote, "Son, I forgot to tell you that I allocated that money to other important things. I only have money for people who treat me with respect and value me. I hope you understand." The response arrived in 30 seconds. "I cannot believe it. Are you seriously going to do this to me? I am not doing anything to you, Jason. I am just applying the same rule as you guys, everyone with their own space. Remember?" A wave of messages followed. First, he tried to make me feel guilty. "I am your only son, Mom. Are you going to let me fall like this?" Then he tried pity. "They are going to repossess the car if I do not pay." Finally came the attack. "Tiffany is right. You are a resentful woman who cannot stand seeing us doing well." I did not respond to anything. But on the 3rd day, I received a call from a number I did not know. I answered, thinking it was a client from the studio. Margaret Sullivan? Yes. Who is speaking? I am Ernest Fields, an accountant. I am a friend of your old friend Jack. He asked me to call you. Jack was Jason's godfather, an honest man who worked at a bank. Tell me, Mr. Fields. Look, your friend asked me to investigate something with discretion. It turns out your son and your daughter-in-law applied for a loan at the bank where I work. As part of the process, I reviewed their credit history. My blood ran cold. And they have debts with 4 different credit cards. The total sum is $12,000. Also, they have a car loan behind by 3 months. If they do not regularize their situation soon, the bank will proceed with repossession. I felt the floor moving under my feet. $12,000? That is correct. And from what I see in the statements, most of that money went to trips, restaurants, clothes, expenses that are not necessities. I thanked him for the information and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table, processing what I had just heard. Not only did they have huge debts, but they had built those debts living a life of luxury they could not afford. And now they wanted me, with my widow's pension and my life savings, to save their ship while they kept punching holes in it. That night I could not sleep. I lay looking at the ceiling of my bedroom, listening to the tick-tock of my grandmother's clock from the living room. Each chime reminded me of my grandmother's words. As long as this clock keeps telling time, the family will stay united. But what family? One where they used me as a bank? One where they defamed me behind my back? One where my own son preferred to believe his wife before defending me? No, that was not a family. It was an illusion I had insisted on keeping alive. And illusions, however beautiful they are, do not pay bills or cure broken hearts. The next day, I did something I had never done. I asked for an appointment with my lawyer. Mr. Henderson attended me in his office downtown. He was a man of 60, discreet and professional, who had helped my family with paperwork since my father was alive. Miss Sullivan, how can I help you? I need to review my will, and I need to protect my assets. The lawyer nodded and took out a folder. Tell me what you have in mind. I explained everything to him. From the exclusions to the debts I discovered. From the loans they never paid back to Tiffany's smear campaign. Mr. Henderson listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, he took off his glasses and looked at me with something that looked like respect. Miss Sullivan, what you are living is more common than you think. Many seniors are viewed as ATMs by their own children. My advice is that you protect your assets now, before it is too late. What do you recommend? First, change your will. Second, create a trust for your grandson. Third, leave everything documented and with witnesses. We spent 2 hours reviewing options. In the end, I made decisions I never thought I would take. But before executing the plan, I needed one more thing: evidence. I called my friend Betty, a woman my age who had been my confidante for 30 years. I asked her to be a witness to something I was about to do. What do you have in mind, Maggie? I am going to record every conversation I have with Jason from now on. I need the truth to remain documented. Betty taught me how to use the voice recorder on my cell phone, and so, armed with a legal plan and evidence that would accumulate, I prepared for the moment that would change everything. Because if I had learned anything in these months of pain, it was this: love is not begged for, it is honored. And I had begged enough. Now it was time for them to learn what it meant to lose me. The following 3 weeks were of absolute silence between Jason and me. Not a call, not a message. It was as if I had died to them. But I was not sitting with my arms crossed. Betty turned out to be an invaluable ally. Between the two of us, we started gathering proof, as if we were detectives in a crime show. Only this was my real life. Look, she told me one afternoon, while we drank coffee in my kitchen. If you are going to do this, do it right. You need it so no one can say you are inventing things. She was right. First, I gathered all the bank transfer receipts I had made to them over 5 years. Every deposit was there, in black and white. $9,800 that left my account to theirs. In none of them was there a receipt of repayment. Afterwards, I looked in my studio for all the sewing jobs I had done for free for Tiffany's family. I found photos of the niece's prom dress, her little cousin's christening suit, the curtains I made for their house. I calculated how much I would have charged if they were normal clients. $2,200 in free work. Then there was the time I watched Tyler. Betty helped me make a chronological list. It turned out that in the last 3 years, I watched my grandson a total of 86 full days. If they had hired a nanny, it would have cost them at least $100 a day. That added up to another $8,600. "Do you realize, Maggie," said Betty while we added it up, "you have given them the equivalent of over $20,000 between money and services, and not a thank you in return." Seeing that number turned my stomach. But the most revealing part came when Susan, finally fed up with Tiffany's lies, decided to help me. "I am going to record what she said at the last gathering," she whispered to me on the phone. "There is going to be a lunch on Sunday at our cousin Erica's house. I am going to carry my cell phone recording in my purse." On Sunday, Susan arrived at the house at 6 in the afternoon with the audio. What I heard took my breath away. It was Tiffany's voice, clear and loud. "Oh, girls, you do not know the drama Margaret gives me. Now it turns out she got mad because we did not invite her to a gathering, as if at her age she has to go from party to party. Jason has explained to her 1,000 times that we need our space, but she does not understand." Another voice, which I recognized as my cousin Erica. "But did she not ask you for money often?" "Exactly. That is the worst part. She asks us for help with her expenses. She says her Social Security isn't enough. And when Jason tells her we cannot help her all the time, she goes into victim mode. It is exhausting." I had to pause the recording because my hands were shaking. "Keep going," urged Susan. "Wait for what is coming." I pressed play again. Tiffany continued. "The thing is that Margaret never really worked. She just sewed once in a while. She does not know what it is to have big responsibilities. And now she wants us, who have kids and real expenses, to support her. But oh well, she is Jason's mom. We have to put up with her." Laughter in the background. Erica. "Oh, friend, what patience you have." Tiffany. "Don't get me started. The other day she wanted us to watch her house because she was going to the doctor." "Watch her house? She lives in the suburbs. Nobody is going to rob her. But she is super dramatic about everything." More laughter. I stopped the recording. Susan hugged me while I tried to process the magnitude of the betrayal. Not only had they stolen money from me, they had stolen my reputation, my dignity, my truth. "What are you going to do?" asked Susan. "I am going to keep gathering proof." I responded with a calm I did not know I had. "And when I have everything ready, I am going to call a family meeting. But not just any meeting, one where everyone hears the truth." That week, I visited Mr. Henderson again. I showed him everything I had compiled. "Miss Sullivan, this is enough for a legal case if you wanted to sue them for the money." "I do not want to sue them," I said. "I want them to see who has really been the manipulator here. And I want to make sure they can never use my name or my house for their benefits again." The lawyer smiled slightly. "Then let us proceed with the plan we discussed." I signed documents, many documents. With every signature, I felt lighter, as if I were dropping chains I had carried for years. The trust for Tyler was established. My house would be inherited by my grandson, but he could only access it at 25 years old. In the meantime, it would be administered by Susan and Mr. Henderson. Jason and Tiffany would not touch a brick. "And if they try to contest the will?" I asked. "With all this documentation, it would be very difficult for them to win. Besides, we have witnesses to the situation of financial and emotional abuse that you have lived." I left that office with a thick folder under my arm and a weight off my heart. But the hardest part was missing, the confrontation. I decided it would be in my house, in my territory. I would invite the whole family, Susan, Erica, my cousins, the uncles, and of course, Jason and Tiffany. I would tell them I had an important announcement about my will. That would make them come running, thinking I was finally going to leave them everything. What a surprise they were in for. I prepared the invitations with care. A simple WhatsApp message. "Important family meeting Saturday, June 20th, at 4 p.m., at my house. I have to announce decisions regarding my estate. It is important that everyone be present." The responses arrived almost immediately. "Susan, I will be there, sister." Erica, "So much intrigue, Auntie. See you there." And the message I was waiting for, From Jason. We will be there, Mom. Is everything okay? I responded with the same coldness he had used with me so many times. Everything is perfect, son. See you Saturday. I passed the following days preparing my house. I cleaned every corner, pruned the purple wisteria that was more lush than ever, baked cornbread, and made iced tea. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I wanted them to see, perhaps for the last time, what my house was like when there was love and dignity in it. Betty came to help me on Friday. Are you sure about this, Maggie? More sure than ever. And if they get mad? What if Jason stops talking to you for good? I stopped in the middle of the living room, holding the duster in my hand. Betty, he already stopped talking to me. He only looks for me when he wants something. If I lose him after this, in reality I lose nothing, because what was between us I already lost a long time ago. My friend nodded with tears in her eyes. That night, before sleeping, I stood in front of my grandmother's clock. I cleaned it carefully, passing a soft cloth over the mahogany wood. Grandma, I whispered, you said that as long as this clock kept telling time, the family would stay united. But sometimes you have to let things break so they can be put back together in the right way. The clock struck 11 times, as it had done for more than 100 years. And I, for the first time in a long time, went to sleep in peace, because I knew that Saturday, come what may, I would finally speak my truth. Saturday dawned with a clear sky, the type of perfect day that seems like a lie, as if the universe wanted to give me a last push of confidence. I got up early, took a long bath, and put on my terracotta-colored dress, the one Robert gave me on our last anniversary. I had not worn it since his funeral, but that day I felt it was the right moment. I tied my mother's wool shawl over my shoulders and looked in the mirror. The woman who looked back at me was no longer the same one begging for love 3 months ago. This woman had a straight back and clear eyes. At 2 p.m, Betty arrived with her husband, Harry, to help me with the final preparations. Do you have everything ready? She asked, while we arranged the chairs in the living room. I pointed toward the dining room table. There was the manila envelope that would contain my future and theirs. Inside, there were copies of all the documents, bank statements, transfer receipts, photographs with dates of the sewing jobs, the transcribed recording of Tiffany defaming me, and of course, the new will certified by Mr. Henderson. All ready, I replied. At 3:30 the family started to arrive. Susan was the first. She gave me a long hug and whispered in my ear, I am proud of you, sister. Erica arrived with her husband, curious. The uncles, the cousins, everyone went filling my living room with that anticipatory murmur of, who knows that something important is going to happen, but doesn't know what. At 4 on the dot, as if they had calculated their arrival to make an entrance, Jason and Tiffany rang the doorbell. I saw them through the curtain before opening. Tiffany wore an impeccable white dress and high heels. Jason, dress pants and an ironed shirt. They came dressed for a celebration. How wrong they were. Hi, Mom, said Jason when I opened, giving me a kiss on the cheek that tasted like acting. Margaret, greeted Tiffany with that smile that no longer fooled me. Come in. Everyone is here. I guided them toward the living room. I saw how Tiffany evaluated those present with her gaze, greeting with her fake charm. They sat on the main sofa, as if they were the guests of honor. I stood in front of everyone, next to my grandmother's clock, which marked exactly 4 to 10. Thank you all for coming. I know I said I had an announcement about my estate, and that is true. But before getting to that, I need you to listen to some things. Silence settled immediately. All gazes were fixed on me. I took a deep breath. 3 months ago, I called my son to ask him when the family barbecue would be. He answered that it had been the day before, and that they had forgotten to tell me, because there were only important people there. I saw Tiffany tense up. Jason looked at the floor. That phrase broke something inside me, but what I did not know then was that exclusion was just the tip of a much larger iceberg. I took the manila envelope from the table. In this envelope, I have documents that show the truth of what my relationship with my son and my daughter-in-law has been in the last 5 years. A murmur ran through the room. First, we have the bank receipts. In 5 years, I have lent Jason $9,800, money he asked me for the down payment on his car, for his wedding, for dental treatments, for emergencies that never were emergencies. Money he promised to return to me and that I never saw back. I took out the sheets and passed them to Susan to circulate. Jason went pale. "Mom, it is not necessary. Let me finish, son. Second, I have here the photographs of all the sewing jobs I did for free for Tiffany's family. If I had charged a fair price, it would be $2,200. Third, there is the calculation of the time I watched Tyler while you guys went on trips. 86 full days that, at a nanny rate, equal $8,600. The sheets went passing from hand to hand. I saw the faces of astonishment of my cousins, the indignation of Susan. That adds up to over $20,000 in money and services I gave, expecting only one thing, to be part of this family. Tiffany tried to interrupt. "Margaret, this is—" I raised my hand. "I have not finished. I also have here something very interesting." I took out the transcription of the recording. This is what Tiffany said about me at a family gathering 2 weeks ago. A gathering to which, of course, I was not invited. I began to read out loud every word she had said about me being a burden, about me asking them for money, about me being dramatic and manipulative. The silence was so dense you could cut it with a knife. When I finished reading, Tiffany was red with fury and shame. That is taken out of context," she stammered. "Seriously? Because I have the complete audio here, if anyone wants to hear it." Erica, my cousin, looked at her with contempt. "Tiffany, you just made a fool of yourself." Jason finally exploded. "Mom, this is a public humiliation. Is this what you brought us here for?" "No, son. I brought you so you would hear the truth. A truth that has been hidden under lies for too long." I approached him and looked him straight in the eyes. "You called me toxic. You told me I was manipulative. You excluded me from your life while taking every dollar you could from me. And when I finally said no, you threatened me that Tiffany was right about me." Tears began to roll down my cheeks, but my voice did not shake. "I am not the toxic one, Jason. I am the one who raised you alone after your father died. I am the one who worked sewing until my fingers hurt so you would have a good education. I am the one who was always there when you needed me." Tiffany stood up. "I am not going to listen to this anymore." "Sit down," said Susan with a voice that admitted no reply. "You are going to hear everything." Tiffany stood there, but did not leave. I took out the last document from the envelope, and now comes the part of the estate I promised to announce. All eyes were fixed on the document I held in my hands. I saw Jason and Tiffany leaning forward, expectant, probably thinking that after all this dramatic scene, I would still end up leaving them everything, because that is how mothers are. How little they really knew me. "This," I said, lifting the certified paper, "is my new will, signed and notarized before Mr. Henderson 2 weeks ago." The lawyer, who had arrived discreetly a few minutes earlier and stood by the door, nodded. "In this will, I have made very important decisions about my assets, and I want everyone to know them so there are no confusions in the future." Jason swallowed audibly. "My house, this house I inherited from my parents, and that has been the home of this family for 3 generations, will be inherited entirely by my grandson, Tyler Cortez." The silence was broken by Tiffany's exclamation. "What? Let me finish. The house will be put in a trust administered by my sister Susan and Mr. Henderson until Tyler turns 25. At that moment, he will decide what to do with it. Meanwhile, I will live here until my death, and afterwards the house will remain under legal custody until my grandson is of age." "That is unfair," screamed Tiffany, forgetting her composure completely. "Jason is your only son. It is his right. A right is earned with respect and dignity, not with humiliations and lies," I responded calmly. "And if you allow me to continue?" Jason was pale as a ghost, but said nothing. "Second, my grandmother's antique clock, this piece that has marked the hours of our family for over 100 years, will not be inherited to anyone in particular. It will be donated to the Family History Museum at the Historical Society, where all family members can visit it, but no one can sell it or claim it as their own." I saw Tiffany's eyes fill with tears of rage. I knew she had already planned to sell that clock. A piece like that could easily be worth $5,000 or more in the antique market. "Third, regarding the $9,800 Jason owes me, I have decided to forgive that debt." Jason looked up, hopeful. "But," I continued, That forgiveness comes with a condition. This is the last thing you will receive from me in economic terms. No more loans, no more financial help, no more free sewing jobs. From this moment on, our relationship will be strictly familial, not financial. Mom, started Jason, I have not finished. Fourth, I have established a savings account for Tyler's college education, $2,000 that I set aside from my pension during the last year. That account can only be accessed by him when he turns 18 and solely for educational expenses. Neither you nor anyone else can touch that money. Susan smiled with pride. Erica and the uncles nodded in approval. And fifth, I have established a visitation schedule with my grandson, a supervised video call every week for 30 minutes and an in-person visit of 2 hours every 15 days here at my house. These visits will be supervised by Susan or by Betty to ensure they actually happen and that Tyler is okay. Supervised? Exploded Tiffany. Now it turns out we are not trusted as parents? No, I responded, looking her straight in the eyes. I do not trust you as intermediaries between my grandson and me. For 3 years you have used Tyler as an excuse to ask me favors, but have denied me real access to him. That is over. Mr. Henderson approached. Everything Miss Sullivan just mentioned is legally documented and certified. Any attempt to contest these provisions will be very difficult to sustain in court, especially with all the evidence she has compiled of financial and emotional abuse. Tiffany stood up abruptly, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. This is ridiculous. Jason, let's go. We are not going to stay here to listen to your mother humiliate us. But Jason did not move. He was sitting with his head in his hands. Jason, I said we are leaving. Wait, he murmured. For the first time since this whole thing started, I saw something in my son's eyes that I hadn't seen in years. Shame. He stood up slowly and looked at me. Mom, I didn't know you felt like this. Bitter laughs from several people in the room resonated at that declaration. You didn't know? Asked Susan incredulously. You didn't know that excluding your mother from family gatherings made her feel bad? You didn't know that asking her for money constantly, without paying her back, was wrong? Jason opened his mouth, but no words came out. I approached him. Despite everything, he was still my son, the boy I carried in my arms, who I nursed when he was sick, who I comforted when he cried. Jason, I love you. That is never going to change. But I am not going to allow you to keep treating me like an ATM with feelings. I am not going to keep begging for a place in your life. But you are my mom? Exactly. I am your mom, not your servant nor your bank. And it is time you understand the difference. Tiffany grabbed Jason by the arm. You heard what she wanted to say. Let's go. But before they could take a step, Tyler came running in from the garden where he had been playing with Erica's kids. Grandma Maggie! My heart melted seeing him. My 7-year-old grandson, with his bright eyes and uncomplicated smile, hugged my legs. Can we eat the cornbread you baked? It smells so good. I bent down to his level and hugged him tight. Of course, my love. Go with your Aunt Susan to the kitchen. She will give you a piece. And you aren't coming? In a moment. First, I have to finish talking to your dad. Tyler ran toward the kitchen, oblivious to all the tension in the room. When I turned back, Tiffany was looking at me with pure hate. This isn't going to stay like this, Margaret. You are going to regret humiliating us in front of the whole family. The only thing I regret, I responded with a firm voice, is having stayed silent for so long, for having allowed you to treat me how you treated me, for having put your comfort before my dignity. I turned toward everyone present. I want all of you to be witnesses to what was said here today, because I know Tiffany will try to flip this story, make me look like the bad guy. But now, everyone knows the truth. Murmurs of support ran through the room. Erica stood up. Aunt Maggie, everyone here is with you. What you did today took a lot of courage. Susan approached and took my hand. My sister is right. It was about time someone put a stop to these abuses. Jason finally spoke, with a broken voice. Mom, I need time to process all this. You have all the time in the world, son, but if you want to have a relationship with me again, it is going to be on my terms. With respect, with honesty, without manipulations. Let's go, Jason, insisted Tiffany, pulling on his arm. This time he let himself be led. I saw them walk toward the door. Before leaving, Jason turned one last time. "Can I come talk to you this week?" "You can come whenever you want, son, but only if you come to really talk, not to ask for money." He nodded and left. When the door closed behind them, I felt all the weight of the last months finally lift from my shoulders. My grandmother's clock struck 5 times, and for the first time in a long time, that sound brought me peace instead of sadness. The days after the family meeting were strange. A different silence filled my house, but it was no longer the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of peace. Susan came every day to drink coffee with me. Erica called me to tell me the whole family was on the side of truth. Betty practically moved into my house during that first week, making sure I was okay. From Jason, not a word for 5 days. Until Thursday afternoon he appeared at my door, alone, without Tiffany. He had puffy eyes, as if he hadn't slept well in days. "Can I come in, Mom?" I stepped aside without saying anything. We sat in the living room, in the same place where I had exposed all the truths. My grandmother's clock marked 4 in the afternoon. Jason rubbed his hands nervously. "I had to kick Tiffany out of the house for a few days." I looked at him surprised. After the meeting, we went home and fought for hours. She said you were manipulative, that all this was theater to make her look bad. But I could no longer keep believing her. His voice broke. "I was reviewing our bank statements. You were right about everything. The debts, the unnecessary expenses, the way we lived beyond our means. Tiffany had told me we were fine, but we are on the verge of getting the car repossessed and possibly the house. And you just realized?" "I realized before, Mom, but I didn't want to see it. It was easier to believe her. Blame you. Justify everything with excuses." He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "I called Aunt Susan. I asked her if everything you said was true. She confirmed every single thing. The times you spoke ill of me with her never existed. It was all Tiffany defaming you and I let her do it." The pain in his voice was genuine. But I had learned not to get carried away just by emotions. "And now what, Jason? You come to ask for forgiveness hoping everything goes back to how it was before?" "No. I come to tell you that you were right about everything and that I understand if you don't want to know anything about me anymore." That took me by surprise. I was a terrible son. I used you. I ignored you. I humiliated you. And the worst is that I let my wife treat you worse than I would ever allow anyone to treat a stranger, much less my mother. He stood up and walked toward the window, looking at the purple wisteria. "Dad would have given me a tremendous beating if he saw how I treated you. He always said you were the strongest woman he knew, and I saw you as weak, as someone I could take advantage of." "What happened with Tiffany?" "I asked her to go to her parents' house for a while. I need to think clearly. I need to decide if I want to continue in a marriage built on lies and appearances. Tyler asks for you every day." My heart clenched. "How is he?" Confused. "He doesn't understand why suddenly he can't see his grandma." I told him it was my fault, that I made very big mistakes. We stayed in silence for several minutes. Only the tick-tock of the clock filled the space. "Mom, I don't come to ask you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it. I just came to tell you that I am going to try to be better. I am going to fix the mess of my life. I am going to look for help to handle the debts. And I am going to make sure Tyler grows up knowing the grandma I had, not the mother-in-law Tiffany invented." I approached him and put my hand on his shoulder. "Son, I never said I didn't want you in my life. I just said I wasn't going to allow more abuse. If you really want to change, I am going to support you. But things are going to be different. I know, and I accept it. The visits with Tyler remain supervised for 3 months. After that, we will evaluate." "Understood. No loans. If you have financial problems, look for a financial advisor. I am not your solution. I will never ask you for money again, Mom. I swear on Dad's memory. And regarding Tiffany, that is your decision. But if you guys stay together, she is going to have to earn my respect again. It is not going to be automatic. I understand. She has a lot to change. And if she can't do it, then I will have to make difficult decisions." I hugged him, my son, my only son, broken, regretful, but finally seeing the truth. "I love you, Jason. I am always going to love you. But love does not mean allowing yourself to be destroyed. I love you, Mom, and I am sorry. I'm truly so sorry, we cried together. A cry that washed away years of pain, lies, and misunderstandings. When he left that afternoon, I felt different. Not completely healed, but yes, on the way. 6 months later, Saturday morning dawned cool. I put on my sewing apron and opened the windows of my studio to let the air in. There was a group of 5 ladies from the neighborhood waiting in my living room. They were my new students. After everything that happened, I decided to turn my studio into something bigger, a space where women of all ages could learn to sew, but also where they could talk, support each other, share their stories. Good morning, ladies, I greeted as I entered with a tray of coffee and sweet rolls. Good morning, Teacher Margaret, they responded in unison. That is what they called me now. Teacher. I liked it. While I taught them how to make the perfect hem on a skirt, I heard the front door. Grandma. It was Tyler. Jason entered behind him, alone. He and Tiffany had separated 3 months ago. It was a difficult but necessary decision. She refused to accept any responsibility for what she had done, and my son finally found the courage to set a boundary. My love. I left the fabric and ran to hug my grandson. Grandma, look what I made at school. He showed me a drawing of a house with purple flowers. It is your house, the teacher said, to draw our favorite place. My eyes filled with tears. It is the most beautiful drawing I have seen in my life. Jason smiled. He looked different. Thinner, a bit tired, but with clearer eyes. Can I talk to you for a moment, Mom? I left Tyler with the ladies, who received him with sweets and affection, and went out to the garden with my son. I got a second job, he told me. At night, consulting on projects. It is heavy. But with that, I will be able to clear the debts in 2 years instead of 5. I am glad you are taking responsibility. I also started therapy. The psychologist has helped me understand many things about how I behaved with you, about how I let Tiffany manipulate me, about everything. I hugged him. I am proud of you, son. Mom, I know 6 months have passed, but I want you to know that every day I think about what happened, and every day I work to be the son you deserve. You already are, Jason. The simple fact that you are trying to change already makes you the son I always knew you could be. My grandmother's clock struck 11 times from inside the house. Tyler ran out to the garden. Grandma, the ladies say you teach them how to make embroidered tortilla warmers like yours. Can I stay to watch? Of course, my love. The 3 of us went back inside. Jason sat in a corner, watching how I taught. Tyler was fascinated with the colored threads. That afternoon, after everyone left, I stayed alone in my studio. I took my mother's wool shawl and put it over my shoulders. I walked toward the living room and stood in front of the empty space on the wall where my grandmother's clock used to hang. I had donated it to the Historical Society Museum last week in a small ceremony. The whole family was there. Father Lawrence said some beautiful words about the importance of preserving family memory without clinging to objects. And although that clock was no longer on my wall, I could hear its chimes in my memory. Each chime reminded me that my grandmother was right. The family stays united not because of a clock, but because of love, respect, and dignity. I looked out the window toward the purple wisteria swaying in the wind. My house was no longer the center of big gatherings like before, but it was something better. It was a refuge of peace, a place of teaching, a space where my dignity lived intact. Jason came every Saturday with Tyler. We sat to eat, talked about life, about challenges, about dreams. There were no longer secrets, nor lies, nor manipulations. Only real conversations between mother, son, and grandson. Susan organized small family gatherings once a month. Everyone respected my space and my time. And me? I had finally learned that true love is not begged for nor bought with money or favors. True love is honored with presence, respect, and coherent actions. I sat in my chair by the window, the same one where I cried so many nights of loneliness. But now, when I sat there, I did not feel sadness. I felt gratitude. Gratitude for having found the courage to say no. Gratitude for having defended my dignity when everyone expected me to stay silent. Gratitude for having realized that it was better to be alone with peace than accompanied by pain. The afternoon sun entered through the window, illuminating the colored threads of my studio. Tomorrow I would have new students. Next week, Tyler would come to stay for the whole weekend. Something Jason proposed, and I accepted with clear conditions. Life continued, different from how I had imagined, but infinitely better than the nightmare I woke up from 6 months ago. I closed my eyes and breathed deep, feeling my mother's shawl over my shoulders, imagining my grandmother smiling at me from wherever she was. "I did it, Grandma," I whispered. I recovered my dignity, and in that moment of perfect silence, I knew that was the best inheritance I could leave Tyler. Not a house, not an antique clock, but the example of a woman who learned to value herself. Because true wealth is not in what you possess, it is in what you do not allow them to take from you. Final reflection. If this story touched your heart, if you recognized in it pieces of your own life or that of someone you love, I want you to know something. It is never too late to recover your dignity. It does not matter how many years you have stayed silent, how many times you have said yes when you wanted to say no, how much love you have given expecting crumbs back. Always, always, you can change the rules of the game. Because valuing yourself is not selfishness, it is survival. Setting boundaries is not cruelty, it is self-love. And walking away from those who hurt you, even if they are family, is not abandonment. It is choosing yourself. Today I invite you to reflect. Is there someone in your life who treats you like Tiffany and Jason treated Margaret? Is there someone who only looks for you when they need something? If the answer is yes, this is your moment to wake up, to take inventory of your life, to decide you deserve more. And if you know someone who is living this situation, share this story. Sometimes, hearing another person's pain gives us the courage to face our own. Leave me a comment. Where are you watching from? Did this story remind you of someone? What decision would you take in Margaret's place? Do not forget to hit like on this video and subscribe to the channel to continue sharing real-life stories that teach us, move us, and remind us that we are never alone in our battles. Remember, love that does not value you is not love, it is habit. And you deserve more than habit. You deserve dignity. You deserve respect. You deserve peace. Until the next story, and may you never forget, your value is not defined by who hurts you, but by you deciding to honor yourself. The end.